The late afternoon sun filtered through the towering glass windows of Callaway Enterprises, casting long beams of golden light across the polished floor as Sierra Monroe cautiously stepped into the CEO's private office. Her breath shallow, her fingers nervously adjusting the cleaning supplies she clutched as though they could shield her from the weight of the moment. The faint aroma of rich cologne mixed with the earthy scent of freshly polished mahogany, creating an atmosphere of both luxury and suffocation that reminded her of how far removed she was from this world of power and privilege, a world she never dared dream of entering, except through the back door of necessity. Her heartbeat thundered in her chest as her emerald eyes briefly locked onto the man behind the desk. The man who owned not only this towering empire, but also, unbeknownst to her until now, a heart that beat faster each time she entered the room. Ethan Callaway, the embodiment of elegance and authority, stood immersed in his paperwork, his tailored charcoal suit perfectly framing his tall, athletic build, his jet black hair gleaming under the recessed lights, and his piercing blue eyes, those hypnotic pools of emotion, rising from the documents to meet her gaze with a force that made her breath hitch and her cheeks flush with warmth. "Miss Monroe, isn't it?" His voice was unexpectedly gentle, laced with something she couldn't quite name. Curiosity, familiarity, or perhaps a tenderness reserved for someone far more intimate than a cleaning employee. Frozen by a mixture of surprise and anxiety, Sierra barely managed to whisper, "Yes, sir," her voice trembling like a fragile leaf caught in a storm, wondering if she had done something wrong, if perhaps today would end with her losing yet another job. But Ethan's gaze never wavered, studying her as though seeing into her soul, recognizing not just the external beauty of her silky blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, or the flawless contour of her figure wrapped modestly in the simple uniform, but the quiet resilience that radiated from every careful movement she made, every respectful nod she offered, every silent struggle she fought beyond these walls. Without breaking eye contact, Ethan slowly circled his desk, his polished shoes gliding over the marble floor with an eerie calm as he approached the door behind her. Reaching out with deliberate intent, and with a quiet click, he locked it. A simple action that instantly shifted the air between them, filling the room with a charged intensity that left Sierra's knees weak and her mind spinning with possibilities she was too afraid to voice. "Sir," she whispered, her voice barely audible, laced with both uncertainty and an instinctive fear of what this closed space now implied. But beneath that fear was a spark of something else, a secret, unspoken anticipation that even she struggled to understand. Ethan inhaled deeply, as though gathering the courage to cross an invisible threshold, his vulnerability slipping through the cracks of his normally unshakable composure as he stepped closer, his voice lowering into something raw and personal. "Sierra, I've watched you for months," he confessed, his words hanging heavy in the air. "The way you carry yourself with quiet strength, the kindness you show even when no one's looking, the grace with which you face a world that's offered you so little, every day you've become impossible for me to ignore." His admission sliced through the silence, leaving Sierra breathless, unable to process the collision of worlds now unfolding. A billionaire confessing love to a woman who scrubbed his floors seemed like a fantasy conjured by sleepless nights, not reality. The room pulsed with the electricity of forbidden emotions, their eyes locked in an unbreakable chain of longing and disbelief. "I can't pretend anymore," Ethan continued, his voice thick with sincerity. "I've fallen for you." In that moment, the weight of his confession pressed against Sierra's chest, her emotions swirling in a chaotic storm of confusion, disbelief, and an aching vulnerability she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. She tried to speak, but her lips trembled, her breath catching as her heart screamed for understanding. Ethan, sensing her turmoil, stepped closer, his presence warm and grounding, his voice dropping into a whisper that sliced through her defenses like sunlight piercing through storm clouds. "You are the storm that calmed my chaos," he whispered, the golden words wrapping around her like an embrace, shattering the final walls she had built to protect herself from the cruelty of the world. Tears welled in her eyes, not from fear, but from the overwhelming flood of emotions, the terrifying beauty of being seen, truly seen, for the first time. Why me? she managed to whisper, her voice barely holding together under the weight of her breaking heart, questioning not his sincerity, but her own worthiness of such love. Ethan's faint smile was filled with both sorrow and conviction as he gently reached for her hand, the warmth of his touch grounding her spinning world. "Because you see me," he murmured, his blue eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Not the billionaire, not the Callaway name, not the empire I control. You see me." In that singular truth, an invisible bond was forged. Two wounded souls recognizing one another amid the blinding glare of wealth and status, standing together in a fragile moment that neither money nor power could fabricate. A moment that marked not the beginning of a fairy tale, but the unveiling of a love profound, complicated, and destined to challenge everything they knew. As the fragile confession hung in the air like a delicate crystal ornament, the days that followed became a silent symphony of stolen glances and wordless longing. Each moment between Ethan and Sierra vibrating with an unspoken electricity they both feared to ignite under the weight of the world watching them. Within the pristine corridors of Callaway Enterprises, they maneuvered like shadows in plain sight, exchanging fleeting eye contact that sent silent messages of devotion, while careful not to arouse suspicion from the ever-vigilant eyes that populated the billionaire's empire. Every elevator ride shared in tense silence became an orchestra of thudding heartbeats. Every brief touch of fingertips while exchanging files ignited invisible sparks that seared through their veins like lightning. Every breath exchanged in the narrow confines of private meetings became a whispered promise of what their hearts already knew, but dared not voice aloud. Yet behind their professional masks, the truth burned brighter each day, a quiet rebellion against the rigid world that had drawn its lines of class, status, and expectation long before they ever crossed paths. Ethan's normally calculating demeanor softened, his sharp business instincts momentarily dulled by the intoxication of newfound love, his mind often wandering during board meetings as he fought to suppress the warmth that flooded his chest every time Sierra's name whispered through his thoughts like a gentle breeze. This shift did not go unnoticed by Victoria Callaway, his mother, whose cold elegance masked a heart obsessed with preserving the pristine image of the Callaway dynasty. Her perfectly manicured nails drummed irritably against marble countertops as she observed her son's sudden smiles, the distant sparkle in his eyes that hadn't existed for years, stirring a storm of suspicion in her calculating mind. Not one to tolerate uncertainties, Victoria summoned Logan Pierce, Ethan's childhood friend turned confidant, a man whose envy simmered beneath a mask of loyalty, eyes always lingering a second too long on everything Ethan possessed, silently coveting the life he could never claim as his own. Sensing opportunity wrapped in betrayal, Logan agreed to investigate, masking his ulterior motives behind a facade of concern, eager to unearth whatever secret now threatened to disrupt the carefully curated world he secretly despised. Meanwhile, as tensions swirled like a brewing hurricane, the prestigious Callaway Charity Gala arrived, an evening dripping in opulence and power, chandeliers sparkling like frozen stars above a sea of designer gowns and whispered political games, where every interaction was a negotiation cloaked in elegance. Sierra, dressed modestly yet radiantly in a borrowed gown that hugged her figure with grace, navigated the crowd like a swan among wolves, fully aware of the disapproving glances from women who measured worth by lineage, not character. It was in the secluded marble restroom where Victoria struck, cornering Sierra with the precision of a viper, her voice a venomous whisper laced with scorn as she sneered, "You don't belong in his world, dear. You're a temporary amusement, nothing more." The words pierced Sierra like icy needles, yet beneath the trembling surface of her chest rose a courage she hadn't known she possessed, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside as she met Victoria's icy gaze and replied with quiet defiance. "With all due respect, Mrs. Callaway, your son's feelings are his own." The brief flicker of fury that flashed across Victoria's eyes was a silent declaration of war, her threat delivered like a dagger cloaked in silk. "I'll destroy you before you destroy this family." As the venom settled into Sierra's veins, she composed herself and exited with grace. But the weight of the confrontation clung to her like a shroud of lead, each step heavier than the last until she finally sought refuge on the estate's moonlit terrace, her fragile composure cracking beneath the weight of fear and heartbreak. Tears shimmered like fragile diamonds beneath her emerald eyes as she sat alone beneath the cold stars, questioning the price of love that seemed destined to devour them both. It was there that Ethan found her, his footsteps urgent, his eyes instantly darkening with concern as he knelt before her, his thumb gently brushing away the silent streams carving down her flushed cheeks, his voice a low, aching whisper laced with unwavering conviction as he promised, "No force in this world can make me unlove you." The words wrapped around her like a shield against the storm, momentarily silencing the chaos that threatened to consume them. Yet unseen in the distance, lurking like a shadow birthed from envy, Logan Pierce watched with clenched fists and burning eyes, his jealousy festering into something darker, far more dangerous, as his ambitions sharpened under the moonlight, plotting quietly as the seeds of betrayal began to take root in his blackening heart. As Logan's venomous gaze burned beneath the moonlit shadows, his mind twisted with malevolent ambition. And while Ethan held Sierra tenderly under the star-sprinkled sky, Logan's fingers were already weaving the web that would soon suffocate them both. Like a predator savoring his advantage, Logan dug deep into Sierra's guarded past, uncovering painful memories she had spent a lifetime trying to bury beneath quiet dignity. The alcoholic father who stumbled through broken promises and violent nights. The childhood punctuated by empty refrigerators and whispered arguments. The loneliness that carved hollow spaces in her soul while others played carefree. And the countless struggles she faced just to survive and preserve the fragments of her shattered innocence. Armed with her vulnerabilities, Logan approached Victoria like a merchant presenting precious weaponry, whispering every cruel detail into her perfectly poised ear, feeding her rage and cementing his place as her most loyal confidant. While Victoria's calculating mind instantly recognized the power these revelations gave her, a weapon capable of severing her son's reckless romance once and for all. The next morning, the world exploded as if detonated by unseen hands. Glossy tabloid covers screamed with merciless headlines, splashing Ethan's private life across every screen and newsstand. Billionaire CEO in love with janitor from broken home. The letters bold and unforgiving, as if mocking the very foundation of Sierra's existence, and within hours, the media circus descended like vultures circling wounded prey. Paparazzi camped outside Sierra's modest apartment, their flashing cameras blinding her with every step, while vicious reporters hurled invasive questions that sliced into her dignity like daggers, forcing her to flee behind closed doors that no longer offered sanctuary. Her mother's aging house was vandalized by cruel opportunists who saw entertainment in her suffering, shattering windows and smearing hateful slurs across fragile walls, as though punishing them for daring to dream beyond their station. And all the while, Ethan fought like a desperate man against an avalanche determined to bury them, deploying his legal team, issuing statements, making public declarations of love that only fueled the media's insatiable hunger further. Inside the fortress of the Callaway estate, Victoria summoned her son into the grand sitting room, the air thick with tension as crystal chandeliers sparkled above, like mocking witnesses to the battlefield that had been prepared. She stood regally, her icy gaze locked onto Ethan's defiant eyes as she delivered her ultimatum with surgical precision, her voice dripping with disdain as she spat. "You'll end this farce, or you'll lose the Callaway name, your shares, everything we've built." She paced with lethal grace, her words slicing through the air like sharpened blades. "She's beneath you, Ethan, a gold digger exploiting your weakness. The board is watching. Investors are losing confidence. This scandal is bleeding our reputation dry." But Ethan's hands balled into fists, his jaw tightening with the ferocity of a man who had already made his choice. And as fire ignited within his usually calm blue eyes, he stepped forward with a voice that thundered with unwavering conviction. "Then I'll build my empire again, from nothing if I must. But I will not lose her." The declaration cracked through the air like a bolt of lightning, silencing the room for a breathless moment. Yet in the privacy of her own quiet torment, Sierra heard whispers of the war raging around her, and felt the crushing weight of guilt pressing into her chest like an iron fist. She watched Ethan from afar, saw the sleepless nights etched beneath his eyes, the endless battles he fought on her behalf, the isolation creeping around him as allies fell away and vultures circled his empire. And though his strength never wavered in public, she saw the private wounds he tried to hide, and the unbearable thought that she had become the dagger, slowly bleeding him dry, tore at her heart, until the only mercy she could find was in surrender. In the silence of midnight, while the mansion slept, Sierra sat at the grand oak desk Ethan once used to sign billion-dollar contracts, her tears falling onto the page as her trembling hand carefully inked every word that shattered her soul. "I love you enough to let you go." The simple sentence bled her heart onto paper, each word a quiet scream of sacrifice as she sealed the letter with shaking fingers and placed it where he would find it. By dawn, she was gone like a whisper in the wind, leaving behind only the echo of her love and the scent of fading perfume that still lingered in his world. When Ethan discovered the note, his chest caved as though the air had been ripped from his lungs, his hands trembling as his vision blurred from the tears that finally broke free. And in that agonizing moment, the man who once ruled empires collapsed onto his knees, clutching the letter as though it were the last remaining piece of his shattered heart, his world spinning into a darkness that neither wealth nor power could rescue him from. As Ethan knelt beneath the crushing silence of Sierra's absence, clutching her final words against his chest like shattered glass embedded in his heart, the mansion that once pulsed with life now stood hollow, each hallway echoing the painful void she left behind. Unable to bear the emptiness, Ethan buried himself beneath mountains of contracts, stock reports, and mergers, as if drowning in business would somehow smother the howling ache clawing at his soul. Yet even beneath the sterile glow of office lights, her memory haunted him like a ghost that refused to fade. Every whispered memory became a blade. Her laughter still danced through his mind like a melody stolen by fate. Her touch still burned on his skin like an ember refusing to die. And though he wore a mask of unbreakable strength in boardrooms, behind closed doors, his nights unraveled into restless torment. In the shadow of Ethan's grief, Logan seized his moment like a serpent slipping through tall grass, his every word to Victoria coated in honeyed poison, earning her trust with fabricated loyalty while fanning the flames of her ambition. With each private conversation, Logan painted himself as the rightful heir, the steady hand who could preserve the Calloway legacy while Ethan floundered under emotional weakness. Victoria, desperate to reclaim control, drank in Logan's words like a parched woman at a poisoned well, her once divided loyalties slowly pivoting toward the man who offered stability, even if that stability was rooted in betrayal. But far from the glittering towers of Calloway Enterprises, Sierra uncovered horrors that made her blood run cold. In her quest for truth, she discovered forged documents, doctored photographs, and falsified financial trails, all carefully orchestrated by Logan to destroy her image, weaponizing lies that transform public perception into a feeding frenzy. Worse still, she found evidence that Logan had bribed her former landlord, coercing him to leak sensitive information and create false narratives that fueled the tabloids, orchestrating the very scandal that nearly shattered Ethan's empire and drove her into exile. Fear gripped Sierra's spine like icy fingers, for exposing Logan meant not only revealing his treachery, but placing herself in the crosshairs of a man who clearly had no boundaries. Yet despite the danger, her love for Ethan became the flickering candle guiding her through the darkness, compelling her to gather every shred of evidence, like fragile feathers that might one day tip the scales of justice. Meanwhile, as Logan's ambition spiraled higher, he proposed a calculated engagement to Victoria's delighted approval, an unholy alliance to secure his hold on the empire, offering her the illusion of restored honor while cloaking his insatiable thirst for power beneath the guise of devotion. The Calloway board, intoxicated by Logan's promises of stability, began to shift their allegiance, whispering doubts about Ethan's leadership while Logan stoked the fire, portraying Ethan as a man ruined by heartbreak, incapable of steering the company through scandal. But just as Logan believed his ascent was complete, Ethan, whose blue eyes now glistened not with grief but with frozen resolve, summoned him for a confrontation beneath the vaulted ceilings of the Calloway estate, the air heavy with unspoken war. Logan entered with a sneer curling his lips, his voice oozing false sympathy as he taunted, "She left you, and now you'll lose everything." But Ethan's expression remained carved from ice, his stare piercing through Logan's bravado like a blade, his voice calm yet laced with lethal determination as he uttered words that cut like thunder. "Not everything. I still have the truth." As Ethan's chilling words, "I still have the truth," hung in the air like an unbreakable sword above Logan's head, he turned away from the venomous confrontation and followed the trail his heart had never abandoned, driving for hours beneath a sky bruised with twilight until he reached the secluded lakeside cabin, a place whispered to him by Sierra's former co-worker, who could no longer bear to watch two souls suffer apart. And there, beneath the embrace of tall pines swaying gently in the breeze, he saw her standing alone by the still waters, her reflection trembling like her heart beneath the moonlight's silver gaze. Ethan stepped forward, his voice soft but trembling with the weight of his journey as he whispered, "Sierra." And at the sound of his voice, her breath caught like a fragile bird startled in flight, her wide, tear-filled eyes lifting to meet his as though seeing a miracle she had long surrendered to dreams. "Why did you run?" he pleaded, the rawness in his voice betraying the agony of days spent drowning in her absence. Without answering, Sierra stumbled into his arms, her sobs erupting from the dam she had fought so hard to hold, and as her tears soaked into his shirt, her body trembled against him, melting into the warmth of his embrace, as if afraid he might vanish like a cruel illusion. Between broken breaths, she gasped, "I couldn't watch them destroy you. I thought letting you go was love." His strong hands cupped her face tenderly, his thumbs wiping away the rivers streaming down her cheeks, his eyes never leaving hers, as he pressed his forehead softly against hers, the closeness grounding them like two shattered halves finding home again. "You are not my weakness, Sierra," he whispered with conviction that shook her core. "You are my strength." His words wrapped around her heart like a balm, breathing life back into wounds she had thought permanent. Inside the cabin, they sat before a crackling fireplace, its golden flames flickering shadows across their faces, the soft glow illuminating the vulnerability etched between them. With each passing second, their eyes exchanged unspoken confessions deeper than any words could hold. Their fingers intertwined as though refusing to ever let go again, while his thumb traced gentle circles against her skin, igniting warmth that was more soul-deep than flesh-bound. Leaning closer, their lips met in the softest kiss, tender, reverent, and unhurried, not born from desire, but from devotion that time, distance, and betrayal had only purified. Their hearts spoke through whispered promises as they gazed into each other's eyes, and beneath the melody of the crackling fire, Ethan murmured, "Whatever storm may come, we stand together." Sierra answered with a fragile smile, her voice quivering like the first bloom after winter. "Together, always." And as the embers glowed, so did the unbreakable bond between them, no longer fragile, but forged by fire, loss, and the kind of love that even empires could not corrupt. As the months gracefully unfolded like petals of a long-awaited bloom, the scars of betrayal and heartbreak began to fade beneath the warmth of healing love. And on a breathtaking evening, bathed in the amber glow of the setting sun, Ethan and Sierra stood hand in hand beneath a canopy of soft ivory blossoms at the Calloway family estate, surrounded by a small gathering of trusted friends and family who had witnessed their turbulent journey and now came to honor their triumphant union. The golden light kissed Sierra's delicate features, her flowing white gown rippling gently in the breeze like a symbol of her resilience, while Ethan, dressed in a tailored navy suit, his piercing blue eyes locked solely on her, whispered vows that trembled with sincerity and reverence. Every word exchanged was not simply a promise, but a testament to the storms they had weathered together, their hands trembling slightly as the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the audience erupting into soft applause as their lips met beneath the crimson sky. A kiss not just of passion, but of redemption. As they stepped away from the altar, Victoria approached hesitantly, her once imposing stature now softened by genuine remorse, her voice quivering as unshed tears sparkled in her eyes. "I was wrong," she confessed, her words fragile as glass. "Can you ever forgive me?" The weight of years lifted as Sierra offered a gentle, steady smile, her voice warm yet firm as she replied, "The past cannot be changed, but the future can be healed." In that moment, generations of pride and prejudice shattered, replaced by the tentative beginnings of understanding, as Victoria reached out and embraced Sierra for the first time, their arms wrapping around each other like a silent truce written not in words, but in grace. As seasons changed and love continued to blossom within their home, Sierra's world was soon filled with new life when she discovered she was pregnant. A revelation that brought tears of awe to Ethan's eyes as he knelt before her, his hands tenderly cradling her growing belly, while he whispered with a voice rich in emotion, "Our child will know a world built not on power, but on love." His words wrapped around her like a blanket of peace, their hearts swelling with the promise of a legacy far removed from the toxic empire that once tried to divide them. Their evenings were now filled with laughter echoing through the grand halls that had once felt cold and hollow. The mansion transformed into a sanctuary of warmth, where every corner carried memories of their resilience. The once locked door that had borne witness to Ethan's first trembling confession now stood open as a symbol of the love they had fearlessly chosen. A door that no longer confined, but welcomed. As the gentle melody of lullabies played softly in the background and the rhythmic glow of the fireplace cast dancing shadows on the nursery walls, Ethan wrapped his arms around Sierra from behind, resting his chin gently on her shoulder as they gazed at the crib awaiting their child. Their painful journey had forged not just a marriage, but an unbreakable bond, a love story written through sacrifice, courage, and the quiet power of two hearts that refused to surrender. And as the stars blinked to life above them, shimmering like silent witnesses to their victory, Ethan whispered once more, "We didn't just survive, Sierra. We built forever."